Hey, one thing we
We're
got to
live.
decide. That's okay. We got to
Okay.
decide the cycle for our giveaway, weekly giveaways. Is it
Oh yeah,
Wednesday through Tuesday?
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, technically that changes now for sure. So, but hey, we're spilling the beans. Like people may not caught shop talk yesterday, and they might be
Well, no
like,
one's
"What are you
logged in
talking
yet and
about?"
watching anyway,
Oh, fair point.
but they'll see this in the recording, I suppose. All
Oh,
right, we got
Mark.
three people. Hey, Mark. Me and Mark are going to connect later today.
That sounds like trouble right there.
Super fun. Everest, Cami, welcome.
Yep. That's
Correct,
correct, Mark.
No mas.
Yesterday was it.
La final. La última.
um. Yeah.
And Riley's gone. That was awkward. So thanks everyone for popping in here. We're getting ready to record today's episode 454. We'll see if Riley can stay online long enough to record the episode or not.
that was my bad, dude. My mouse, if I swipe left, it's the equivalent of a back in a browser, and I was moving my hand, and it just happened to brush across it. So, woo! Like it surprised me, and I was like, "Whoa, what happened?"
Well, you should be more careful with your fancy mouse.
Gestures, it's a thing.
I heard about it.
Yeah. Giveaway. We should even have one up for this week, although I don't know that we promoted it last week necessarily.
Well, but we definitely got entries. Like we definitely have a winner for this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, Johnny, Bobby, Keith.
Oh, shoot.
John, Eddie. Welcome. We're going to start recording in just a few moments. So technically, we are recording, like as far as Facebook and YouTube are concerned. When I say start recording, I mean the podcast itself, episode 454. Look, me and Riley have matching hats. That makes it cool or lame. The way we match. I don't know.
It's kind of, I don't know.
My issue is that the blue is not the blue we wanted. I don't know if you can tell in the camera, but it's a little too like aqua.
In your view, it looks better. It looks more like the color, but mine is definitely aqua colored.
Yeah. It's a little too green.
Don't Appendix carry that mouse.
Nice, Kevin. Nice. Welcome, Randy. Yep. Ken.
Had a negligent discharge.
Johnny. There. It's right. ND on the mouse. Yeah. You gotta mind the finger discipline.
So looks like we're announcing a winner of a Legal Boundaries ebook. Cool. Very nice. Blurry. Maybe.
Looks good to me.
All right. I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to mute my mic and sneeze, and then I think we can start.
All right. You go sneeze.
Oh, wait. I think it came and it went. Wow. That's amazing.
It's like a curse.
So, dude, when I broke all my ribs on the one side of my chest and punctured my lung and all that many years ago now, I became a pro at suppressing sneezes and coughs. I can
Congratulations.
I can do it at will, like as far as suppressing a sneeze, no matter how bad it is. But ever since I healed from that injury, why would I? Like it felt so good to sneeze the first time after I couldn't for like 3 months. That, yeah. So random factoid.
Yeah. I was going to try and like come up with something comparable, but it's like, you know what? No one wants to listen to this. So I'm going to stop talking now.
Well, it's time to rock and roll. Sorry. We're goofing off probably more than we should today, but I'm excited to do this episode because there's some changes afoot, and I'm excited about all that. So let's do this thing. In 3, well, when Jacob's done messing with his mic.
All right, I'm good now. I just moved it a little closer.
In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 454. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host today, Riley Bowman, and I am joined by our amazing founder and president of Concealed Carry Inc., Jacob Paulsen. Hello, sir.
Thank you for the invitation, Riley. Pleasure to be here.
Such an honor to have you on the show with me today. You and I are doing the show today because this is a big one for us because it's another, I think, milestone in the evolution of the podcast. We're going to talk about some exciting new changes coming to the show and to the format, the way we do things here. Everything is with, of course, the intent of making it better, higher quality, and improving the show as we go forward. So I'm really excited to discuss those things with you in today's episode. But also, we're going to be sharing the most recent Shooter Ready Challenge, which is actually support hand only shooting. Last month was your primary hand or shooting hand only. So now we're going to talk about support hand only. Very similar in a lot of ways, but obviously different because it's harder. So excited about the episode. Today's episode, because of Shooter Ready Challenge, these are sponsors of the Shooter Ready Challenge as well. So today's episode is brought to you by LASR, which is found at lasrapp.com, lasrapp.com, and their wonderful Laser X software, which makes dry fire. It adds a whole other dimension to dry fire. Jacob and I have used Laser or Laser X, which is the most recent version, the version that's compatible with any internet-connected device, tablet, phone, computer, doesn't matter. And so go on over to lasrapp.com to learn more about Laser X and see what it can do for you in your dry fire practice. All the more important to do dry fire these days because of ammunition availability and cost, which doesn't look like it's resolving itself anytime soon. So step up that dry fire game today with Laser X. Also, the next level training CERT pistol is one of the primary tools I use with Laser X. Jacob, tell us, you've been a user of CERT pistols for a long time. What's your What's your big takeaway? Or what do you want to tell people about CERT pistols if they don't already know?
Guys like you and me, Riley, we're blessed to, by nature being in the industry full time as employees of the firearm industry, to have at our disposal basically all of the toys, right? I got a cool fire trainer. I got CERT pistols. I got laser light pistols. I got laser dot trainer cartridge ammo thingy, bullet thingies. I have barrel blocks. I have dry fire mags. I have Glock easy trainers. I mean, we pretty much have all the toys. I have an airsoft, gun that's exactly the same as my EDC gun. And despite having all the toys now, and the Mantis. I mean, we can keep going. LASR software. I got all the toys. Despite having all the toys, without question, the one that gets the majority of use is the CERT pistol. And this is true of everybody I talk to in the game. Like anyone who's in the industry, even if they have access to everything, right? They've purchased it all. The thing they use the most is definitely the CERT pistol, because for a number of reasons. One, I don't have to set up software. I can, right? I can use it with LASR, but I can just pick up the gun and go. I can do it while I'm on the phone. I don't have to break apart my gun and change out the barrel and recoil spring. I don't have to charge it with air. I don't have to worry about anything. I just grab the gun and go. And it's got a resetting trigger, so I'm going to get pretty dang realistic work. I can, lighten or tighten the trigger if I want it to be a little heavier or a little bit lighter. I leave mine kind of at stock, which is a little heavy. Riley does not. He likes to make it a little bit more similar to his actual gun. But you're not going to ever use any tool in dry fire as much as you'll use a CERT pistol, Now, I wish that they had them in more models, but you have a pretty good list right now. You have the Glock, the Cert 110, which is the Glock. It's a Glock 17, effectively. You have the Cert 107, which is a full-size M&P. You have the Cert 20C, which is a P320 compact. The Cert 20 normal, which is like a full-size 320, and then you have the Cert Pocket Pistol, which is M&P Shield-ish, Glock 43-ish, ish. So yeah, I just don't think that there's nothing I use more than Cert. I don't know how to give like a better endorsement than that.
Yeah. Yep. I have become a lot more strategic in my use of the Cert pistol in recent years, but it still is a valuable training tool. And one thing that's great for is for just demonstrating or talking about training or shooting concepts to other shooters as an instructor or to family members, to my children. The Cert pistol is a great training aid. So super excited again about today's episode. Again, we're going to talk about today's topic being the support hand only shooting, which we'll get into that momentarily, and the Shooter Ready Challenge for the month of October. But first, I want to talk about changes to the podcast that we're going to bring to you, actually, as of today. In fact, we're doing this show live today on Wednesday, which many of you probably think, well, they had some conflict yesterday, and so it got pushed back one day. The truth is, we're actually doing 2 live shows today. We're doing this one now, started at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, and we are doing one again at 4 o'clock Mountain Time today, and that is very much intentional. So, the changes to the podcast. For a long time now, we've done 2 episodes a week. And for a long time now, our goal has been to do those 2 episodes one on Tuesday, one on Thursday each week. We have taken stock of where we are with things and with available resources, and we have elected now to bring to you 2 episodes a week. Still no change as far as that's concerned. But we're going to produce all of that podcast content on one single day, Wednesdays of each week. At least that's the plan. That's the intent. Probably will still be modifications from time to time. Like Jacob, I realize that already next week is probably a bit screwy.
Yeah,
because you and I are going to be in Arizona
traveling. Yeah, this is also important, I think. In terms of like why we'd make these changes, I think that some of you are listening. We have kind of 3 different types of consumers right now of our podcast. We have what we would call live viewers, people who log into Facebook or YouTube when we're recording live. Then we also have what I would call post live video watchers, people who go to our Facebook page or YouTube channel and watch the podcast video after it's been recorded, but it's still there. And then we have audio listeners, people who just are download the podcast to an app on their phone or their car or whatever, and that's how they listen to this podcast. The challenge has been, when we started recording on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it became really quickly apparent that we couldn't create a consistent experience. It just was too troubling. And so, if you were tuning into the lives, we tried really hard to be close and similar. But then for the audio-only listener, which represents thousands and thousands of you, it was tough. It just wasn't consistent. You didn't know when you were going to get our episodes, and that was a challenge. So this new format's going to be a lot better, hopefully a lot more consistent. On Wednesdays, we'll record both of our weekly podcast episodes. We'll do that at Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Mountain Time where possible. And then those episodes will be the ones published to the audio feed the following week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That would be our 10th, that an episode would be released on Tuesday and it would be released on Thursday. So for those of you who primarily consume our podcast audio only, which is awesome and fine and good and dandy, hopefully you're going to have a much more consistent experience moving forward than you have in the past, where it seems like you go lots of days without anything. And then over the course of 2 days, we dropped 3 episodes. And it was a challenge for us by the nature of our workflow with other things we do other than produce a podcast. So our hope would be that significantly more consistency for audio only listeners. For those of you who watch the recordings of the show, probably not going to be much different, other than now you know that both of those should happen on Wednesday. So Thursday through Tuesday you can consume those. For those of you who like to attend live, we're hoping that by having 2 different time periods, one of them record at 1 p.m., the other one record at 4 p.m. Mountain, that maybe not a lot of you might be able to watch both. Some of you probably will, but we're hoping that some of you might get a chance to where you previously did not. So hopefully that cycles it up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, we may, due to guest interviews and things, might have to make some exceptions here and there. But that's the planned format and schedule at this current time, and that's what we're going to work with.
Knowing that next week is going to be who knows what.
Yeah, so bear with us, and the following week we should be back on schedule.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we did pick Wednesdays because generally they're the least interrupted day of the week. They're the least likely to be hit by a day off, a holiday, any vacation. I mean, Wednesdays just are probably going to be our best, most consistent option.
Yep. Even down to things like some of our internal company meetings. Like it seems that many of our quarterly meetings we do with all of our staff are like on a Thursday, and that has always conflicted with podcast days and stuff. And so, yeah, Wednesday should be a good day, and I'm looking forward to it. Along with the podcast changes, we also decided to do away with the ever popular Shop Talk live show. We've been doing that for a while now, and we've had many of you join with us and watch that live for quite some time, and it seems like it's been positively received, and I've enjoyed doing those Shop Talk shows, which is just kind of an opportunity to talk about all kinds of things, and also feature some products and things as well. And we were doing that on Mondays, and then we had podcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And frankly, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily personally be opposed to doing Shop Talk like on Wednesdays along with everything else, but it is a lot of stuff. And I felt like that would be too much to do in a single day. And really another, the big goal is freeing up some resources so we can produce more high quality, high impact content, more professionally produced content as well, that we'll be able to work with our video team, which is really one guy, and be able to film more videos, get those edited, get those published, both for our members, our Guardian Nation members only, but also, to the open to the public as well. So, anyway, it's going to be a good time, and I'm looking forward to the future and what it brings. Hopefully all of this will be a step up and a step in the right direction as well.
And for those of you who enjoy entering into the weekly podcast prize giveaway, also it's noteworthy that we'll continue to do a weekly giveaway every single week. We're just shifting the entry times, right? Because it's a revolving door. You have to enter every week for that week's prize. And so moving forward, I think what we decided, Riley, tell me if I'm wrong, but people can enter starting on Wednesday through Tuesday, correct? Is that the plan?
Essentially, yes. We'll get more specific, I think, on what time those will end. I mean, it could be Tuesday night, midnight. Technically could actually run it through basically from like noon to noon Mountain Time each Wednesday too, because it's done by the time we're doing the podcast.
Yeah, that works.
I don't know.
But the point is, if you need to make any adjustments, I mean, at the end of the day, if you just pick the same day each week and you go to the website, concealedcarry.com/podcast prize, and you enter, you're going to be fine. But that's kind of the new cycle.
Yep. And see a comment on YouTube asking if they're going to continue being, the podcast shows being live on Facebook and YouTube. And our plan is not to change any of that at the current time. So wherever you choose to watch or listen to us, all that should remain the same. So, yeah, let's get into our topic for today's episode. We're going to talk about support hand only shooting. which is this month's featured skill in our Shooter Ready Challenge. As many of you know, we've been doing this Shooter Ready Challenge thing for like, what, a year or so now?
I think October of last year was the first month. So I think maybe we've published 13 of them in theory.
Yeah. And so basically with those Shooter Ready Challenges, we've been working, we partnered with LASR, the laser app team, as they're sponsors of that. And so because of that, we use the Laser X software and do some dry fire drills and film that and put that up on shooterreadychallenge.com. I'm telling you this for those of you that don't know. And if you haven't checked out shooterreadychallenge.com, you might consider going and doing that. And you'll be able to see the video there and watch me demonstrate and talk about the relevant skills to that particular drill. This month's is simple in that it's essentially 5-shot groups, if you will, one hand only, which is your support hand only in this case. Not a terribly great distance. You can do it whatever distance you want, frankly, but I do mine on a scaled target that works out to be about 7 yards. And that seems like an appropriate distance for this. So basically, it's draw a gun out of holster, transition over to your support hand, and fire 5 shots on the target on a wall or whatever. That Laser X, you have a camera pointed at it, and it's evaluating those hits that are indicated by your laser trainer of choice. You could be using a laser. We have our new laser dot trainer cartridges, the little dry fire laser insert you put in your chamber of your gun and dry fire with. You could be using a SIRT pistol in theory, and provided the lighting and your camera is good enough at a high enough frame rate, you could use a laser device attached to an airsoft or a cool fire training gun as well. And so anyway, 5 shots, support hand only. Yes, again, it's from the draw and then a transition over to the support hand. I in our conversation today, Jacob, I'd like to actually kind of build upon some other support hand only related skills and even drills that people could perform at home or at the range. But that's essential. That's the essence of the drill is what I just described there.
Yeah. So I think we need to maybe justify the effort. I do on sometimes. I think hear from shooters who will say things like, how realistic is that? What are the odds of me having to ever shoot, one-handed, support hand only, things like that. But it's actually pretty remarkable. I really should ask John Correa to give us some stats on this, because it's actually remarkable to me what a high percentage of gun surveillance videos show the shooter shooting one-handed. And I mean the defensive shooter, not, you might say, oh, sure, the criminals, the criminals are all gangster, carry whateverness. But I actually mean defensive shooters at a very high percent. Well, I mean, more than I would have thought, a significantly higher percentage of the time than I would have thought it's one-handed shooting. Whether that's based on environment and the need to get around an object or whatever it might be, or because the other hand is occupied, it's holding something that just can't let go or drop it, or whatever it might be, or carrying a baby. We've seen several of those videos. But I think that if you're a person who thinks it's not super realistic or not a necessary skill to learn to shoot one-handed, I think you're not paying attention. I think you're naive. And as to the support hand, I think if you accept that you might have to shoot one-handed, then you should naturally accept that the need might be there to shoot with either hand based on context.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's pretty evident from just watching any number of videos on Active Self-Protection's YouTube channel that shooting one-handed, primarily with the dominant hand, is fairly common. And we even see people that don't necessarily have their support hand occupied by anything, but for whatever reason, the brain does funny things sometimes. And I think this is more prevalent with a shooter that is perhaps less trained in some ways, or they just don't have as much time behind the trigger, where, it's grab and point and shoot the gun. Because where I'm going with that, Jacob, is when you take someone that is highly skilled and they spend a lot of time dry firing, a lot of time shooting live fire, and their skill level is at a place where their brain will almost not allow them to fire a shot unless they see what they need to see in the sight picture.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that if I'm shooting one-handed, it makes that, like, subconsciously for me, it's like, why would I do this? Because I can see better what I want and what I need to see to make those hits count with two hands on the gun. But the brain does crazy things. And for many of these individuals that are caught up in a sudden life or death situation, they grab the gun and they just extend and point and shoot. And certainly there's many examples of people being successful with that kind of approach, whether they get hits on target or not. Now, we need a caution here. We need to be accountable for every round that we fire. Every round should be attached to a decision, and that decision-making process should be linked to, a threat that we see and we identify, and a recognition that our gun is aimed at that threat, and then the decision sent to that trigger finger to say, okay, go, fire shot.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is like, we do see plenty of examples of one-handed shooting, but it's almost always with the primary hand. I seem to recall John talking once about support hand only, not really being a thing that he's aware of. I don't think he really has. He might, okay, but I seem to remember him talking at one time about not really having any examples of a civilian having to shoot support hand only.
Well, here's a thought then. Here's a potential argument. This is going to sound crazy, but I swear I'll bring this back around.
Sure.
I am a student of a couple of foreign languages. In high school, I studied 4 years of Spanish and 1 year of French. And then I moved to Brazil for a few years and became very proficient with Portuguese. So all Latin languages, all very similar. And today I am a student of Spanish. I study Spanish every day. And what's always been remarkable to me is I learn significantly more English by studying Spanish than I ever learned studying English. And if you've ever studied a foreign language, you know exactly what I mean. Like my biggest ahas about the English language came sitting in a Spanish class in high school, right? And they'd teach you something about it, and you'd learn things, and you'd be like, but wait a minute. But in English, da-da-da-da-da. And then you'd be like, oh, I get it now. Now I actually understand why we do that in English, because I'm learning a foreign language. And so here's the connection. Here's my attempt to bring it back. And I see that you just responded to Todd's comment here, who's live with us today, and also mentioned this. I think that shooting weak hand only, you're going to discover where your vulnerabilities are. You're going to very much more quickly, I guess, determine how a person can shoot one-handed well. And when you force yourself to do it in the most compromised, weakest method you have available to you, you're going to get much better at it, because you're going to figure out all the little tiny things you have to do to overcome those weaknesses. So by putting the gun in my weak hand only, I'm right-handed, so for me, that's my left hand, and putting it in my left hand, all of my deficiencies are going to be accentuated because it's my weak hand. They're going to be overly accentuated. Yeah, like that's the best word, right? Everyone knows what I mean. So I have to really dial that in, and I got to figure that out. And that process, that learning process, is going to get extremely valuable when I come back over to strong hand only. And I think that's the takeaway here. Everest has got my back. He says that he studies a good number of foreign languages, and ancient Greek taught him more English than anything. Sounds legit to me, Everest.
Yeah. So I completely agree, Jacob, and also with Todd talking about improving your weak hand helps, with shooting of really any kind. Here's what I find about shooting support hand only. And I tried, it's really semantics, but I really do prefer saying support hand or secondary hand or something to that effect, because I do believe in positive reinforcement, and always calling this thing my weak hand is, I don't think it's not fair. In fact, here's something too to understand, guys. Your support hand is the hand that is doing a lot of the work relating to recoil management and control of the gun when you're shooting
in a two-handed grip.
Yep, exactly. Your support hand, well, at least in the case of mine, that may not be true of everybody, but I've practiced a long time. I've gotten pretty proficient. I do exercises with various hand strength exercises. I have a very strong support hand. Okay, so my support hand is not weak. However, it's not particularly well refined in the application of that strength, right? It's more difficult because where I have spent all this time strengthening that support hand and making sure it gets really good contact on the gun, on the grip, and managing that recoil really well, simultaneously, my trigger finger on my primary hand has gotten really good at isolating that trigger finger and working the trigger while not moving the rest of the hand. The support hand, my left hand in my case, does not have as much trigger time. That's just a reality and a fact of life. And some people are more ambidextrous than others and are more naturally inclined anyway to be able to manipulate those individual digits a little bit better than others. But still, you pretty much don't really run into many situations where a person is equally as good with either hand, using those respective hands only, because whatever hand is getting the most time and the most work, the most practice with trigger manipulation and that kind of stuff, that's usually the hand that's going to be a little bit better. Now we can work to make, like I know in the case of John Correa, he's left eye dominant, but he's actually right-handed, but he was shooting rifles left-handed, and in his world he just thought, you know what, it would make a lot more sense for me if I just shot my pistols left-handed too. He's talked about this in his videos, where he just started training and learning how to shoot with his supposed weak hand or support hand, and has made it his now primary hand, his dominant hand, where it comes to shooting a pistol. We should probably actually talk. Maybe we should have him on the podcast again sometime and actually pick on that a little bit, because that'd be interesting to learn about, like, from his perspective, if he feels like now his right hand doesn't shoot as well as his left hand, but at some point it must have made that switch, I presume. I don't know. I'm reading into that. Anyway, point is, support hand is not as weak as we think. It's usually doing a lot of work. It's just doing different work, right? And so because we don't get a lot of trigger time on that support hand, it's different. It feels weird, feels awkward even, is not as refined, and so it's more difficult. Now, all of that to get back around to kind of where you were at, Jacob, here's what's interesting. Spending time on learning on my left hand, in my case, my support hand only, is kind of like relearning, or it's kind of like teaching myself what it was like to shoot in the very beginning. I mean, that's a bit maybe extreme, because I do actually shoot okay these days with support hand only, but I am not anywhere close support hand only like I am to primary hand only. So it's kind of like taking a step back in time to when I wasn't quite as good a shooter with my primary hand. And so all of those same lessons have to be relearned in a way. It's like, oh, wait, when I do this, my grip moves, my hand torques into the grip, and now it moves off target. That's my big tendency. I go low right very easily with support hand only. It's so easy. Like, whack, that whole torque and breaking of the wrist and everything. Oh man, I have to work so hard to keep everything totally still, to keep that wrist locked and in place while I'm manipulating that trigger finger. And so it's like going back and relearning to shoot. And that actually does help, I think, and translate over to all other aspects of my shooting.
Yeah, super fair. That makes sense to me. I'll apologize quickly for saying weak or whatever word I used. I'm not really into those semantics. I'm trying to be
No need to apologize, bro.
I try to be audience conscientious, so depending on who's in the room, I'll try to follow the support or weak or non-dominant or whatever term people prefer. I really just don't care. But yeah, there you have there Jacob's apology for using wrong words.
No need for an apology, bro. Like, and everybody gets it. Everybody understands what you mean. But as kind of like we were talking last night with Brian Hill from Complete Combatant last night in our Guardian Nation members, live broadcast, and talking about the, kind of the mental part of shooting and positive reinforcement, all that stuff. Man, I've become a real believer in the last year or so. So anyway,
words do matter. So let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's go here, Riley. In the Shoot Ready Challenge, I think you primarily focus on drawing with the strong hand and then transitioning to the support hand. But before we go there, I'd like to hear quickly thoughts about drawing with the support hand.
Yeah.
And, for people who are pondering about that.
Yeah. And we had a question, I think, from Everest. I think somebody asked about drawing support hand only. Okay. So instead of drawing with your primary hand and transitioning to support hand, to actually draw with the support hand in the first place, that would be the more realistic thing in a way, right? Like, imagine your gunfight didn't materialize the way that you hoped it would, and right off the bat you sustain an injury before you can get your gun out, your dominant hand is injured or arm, but your gun's still in your holster. So Everest's question specifically was about drawing support hand only from an appendix holster. So I'll start there. Then we could talk about some other carry positions. And really, there's two approaches. One is to actually draw with the hand on the gun sort of upside down. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm appendix carry. My gun grip, the grip of the gun is pointing to my right side. I would just reach down with my left hand and grab the grip as if it was no different, except in this case, the gun is actually going to be upside down in my hand. And you could come out of the holster and then pin it against your body and basically roll the gun over on your chest and then reassume your grip, and away you go. That's one option. It's not my preferred choice or method because there's a lot of liability in trying to do that. It's also not very practical if you're actually in the middle of a fight. To actually get the gun out of the holster on your chest, hold it there as you manipulate and move things around and reassume your grip, like, just sounds like a recipe for disaster. So the easier thing is to actually, and it's hard, especially if you're not very flexible in the joints, in the elbow and the shoulder, but you actually invert your hand completely. You rotate it inboard and you keep going until your hand matches the orientation of the grip in what is a backwards holster for your left hand.
Yeah, palm out.
And exactly, palm out, but your hand is basically right, it's totally twisted around, and you draw out and you do that. That works better, I think, is more predictable, is more useful in a practical sense. It's awkward, and some people won't be able to do it very well. But that's my preferred method these days. And for appendix carry, that method works awesome because it's actually doable. But if you're carrying at 3 or 4 o'clock, especially like 4:30, you're like the complete opposite end of your body from your left hand. Of course, I'm doing this all in the right hand context. That's difficult. And in fact, frankly, drawing from a holster that's on your dominant side with your non-dominant hand is just hard. It's hard. It just is.
That's pretty sucky. Though around the back, I mean, if we're talking more like a 4:30, 5 o'clock carry position, that's actually pretty doable.
If you get further back, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and again, depends on how flexible and mobile your arm
that gets
is.
much more doable for sure.
It's a possibility, but I don't like carrying that far back for various reasons. This is not meant to talk about that position. So if I'm carrying IWB, I'm pretty strictly at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and that's like I'm doing it right now as I'm talking on the mic, and it's like I can kind of get there, but it's tough.
That's easy cause for me, dude. I mean, I can reach all the way around. You can see my hand. It's no big deal.
For the audio only listeners, I'm so sorry you can't see this. This actually kind of looks funny. Jacob standing and demonstrating how his left hand can go all the way to the other side of his body. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just a bigger dude, bro, and I know we have listeners and viewers that are even bigger than me, girth wise, and so the distance gets increased.
Yeah, do what you got to do. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't get a grip on the gun such that when you come out of the holster, you got the grip, then you need to just figure out how to get the gun out of the holster and then get it into the grip, whether that's, as you described, pinning it, rolling it across the chest or the body, or setting it down on the ground and then re-picking it up. You know what I mean? Or Everest mentioned pinning it between your knees. I mean, do whatever is going to be safe and consistent, reliable, and all that stuff. But the answer is figure it out.
Yeah. See, and I didn't touch on those other options because in my mind, I don't even really think about them, because they get less and less practical. So I'm always thinking in the context of trying to keep that gun with me and on my person, which certainly pinning it between my knees, that's true. It's still with me, but very, very impractical because now I can't move. Like it is a stationary position only option. Now we could talk about maybe you've lost the use of a hand or an arm to some extent, but you still have a little bit there that you can, let's just assume you got shot, and maybe you got shot and it just happened to sever a nerve or something, which is why the hand stops working so well, but you still have an arm that's basically working. You could, in theory, pinch it between your arm and your chest or in your armpit and maybe do something that way too. So there's all kinds of options, but again, I much prefer trying to stick with the things that allow me to maintain mobility and well, that's really the big thing, mobility, right? Because keep in mind, I'm probably in some kind of fight, and so I need to access my gun in a way that's practical in that, in that context.
All right, so let's presume though that I have the ability, for whatever reason, to draw with my dominant hand, and then transition to the support hand. I think that's one of the major things you focus on in the Shooter Ready Challenge this month, for those who haven't seen it. Yeah. And that's obviously a bit of a different situation. And this is one we see a lot more in terms of administrative work. When you're at a shooting match, or you're in a class with an instructor like us, and you're on the range and the instructor says, hey, now we're going to shoot support hand only. This is a situation where almost every time, this is what we're going to ask you to do. We're going to have you draw strong hand and then transition over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did it this way in the Shooter Ready Challenge because it's kind of the starting place. You know what I mean? Like, this is where I would start somebody. It is, okay, we're going to draw the gun out with our usual hand, our normal hand that we usually draw with, and we're going to now learn how to safely transition that into the other hand, because really the purpose of the goal is more focused on the shooting aspect, but also getting used to that inner, in between hand manipulation as well. Because even if that's not practical in a lot of contexts, I still think it's good. Like, it's just good manipulation skill stuff. Like, just the idea of having the gun in the hand, having to manipulate it with this hand, but also get it to this hand and manipulate with that hand and back and forth. Like, all of that just it expands our repertoire of what our body mechanics and all that, like we learn how to better manipulate the gun when we do things like that. It also works well for those that are interested or are involved in the shooting sports, meaning your competitive shooting, IDPA, USPSA, that kind of stuff, where shooting stages or drills or classifiers involve a weak hand only, or in this case, they almost always call it weak hand, WHO, in the matches. So yeah, occasionally it does slip out because that is literally like what they call it in a lot of the stage briefings. But there's a lot of classifiers and stuff in USPSA where you shoot part of the classifier either two-handed or with your dominant hand, and then you perform a reload and you transition immediately over to your support hand. So anyway, point is this month's Shooter Ready Challenge is more it's more focused on the shooting aspect and some basic manipulation skills. Let's actually take this a bit further, Jacob. What's actually more realistic, particularly in, I think, like a civilian context, even a law enforcement one to some degree? What's more realistic? You having to draw your gun with your support hand only from your holster, or you initially got the gun out and engaged with your threat, but in the process, by the way, it is not uncommon at all to take rounds in the hand and in the arm, the forearm, when you're shooting it, when two people are shooting at each other, because it's in the center of your chest, and that's where we're trying to put shots a lot of times. So you're going along, and all of a sudden you take a round to the right hand, the right arm, and it causes you to drop the gun. First of all, I would insert here a caveat. We should never assume, like, we should be ready for this possibility that if we take an injury, could be from a knife slash even, right? That it could be really gnarly looking. It could look terrible. We could have skin, and muscle and fat tissue. I know, sorry for the gore, like protruding out of our arm from a nasty wound or gash. We shouldn't assume that we can't use that hand still. I shouldn't just go, oh no, I got shot in my right hand, I can't use it now. No, I would say check if you actually try to use it. Actually try to stick with the plan and stay in the fight. And if you go to grab the gun and you're trying to manipulate the gun and you realize, oh wait, 3 of my fingers aren't there, they got blown off by a shot, a gunshot or whatever. Okay, all right. Now we go to the support hand. What's more likely is probably picking up the gun in our support hand from the ground. That is, if we end up having to shoot support hand only, it probably means picking the gun up from the ground. So I would recommend actually practicing that. Having the gun in various orientations, left side, right side, flip it different directions, and actually get used to what that's like, picking up the gun from a surface, from a table, from the ground with your support hand only, and then getting up on target.
Tell me if you think this is crazy, Riley, but in my head, when I'm practicing, like dry fire, maybe not live, but when I'm doing dry fire with support hand only, I also try a lot of weird directional kind of shooting, because I often presume that if I'm shooting one-handed only or support hand or dominant hand, that it might be because it's what's necessary to get a shot on a target in a certain place based on, for example, let's say you're sitting in a car seat. It's pretty hard to pivot your entire body in a single direction. It might mean you gotta shoot one-handed in order to get the shot where he needs to go. And a safety and all other tactics aside, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there might be something to this idea that it may not be straight in front of you. If you're shooting one-handed only, it might be a target that's not exactly square with your body. So yeah. I do, when I do some one-handed only dry fire, I often will work, with targets in different directions as well, not always directly in front of me.
Well, that's not a bad thing, because, transitions are a good thing to practice. And I often refer to transition drills, because people will be like, what are you, John Wick? Like, you're going to shoot 3 guys and shoot 2 on one, 2 on the other, and 2 on another, like a El Presidente style. No, but I think transition drills are kind of the starting place for learning how to shoot a moving target in actuality. But anyway, that's a topic for another, and we've talked about in the podcast before. But to your point, so there may be something to that to some degree, but I really abhor changing hands with a gun if I don't absolutely have to. And by absolutely have to, because there's something wrong with my primary hand. And the reason being is because I'm usually just going to be less effective. So you talk about, well, what if I had this really awkward, over my shoulder shot? My priority would be to actually try to get myself positioned so I could take that shot as normally as possible. Because there comes a point too where you probably ought to consider not taking that shot. Sure. There's a high probability you're going to miss. It's an awkward direction. It's over the shoulder. You can't even really, get a good sight picture. I think that is a very, very, very limited use sort of context, and not really practical. Again, could it exist? I suppose. Now, I do actually want to address Todd's comment here. He says, "What if you're shooting around cover? Essentially, is what he's getting at. You're going around the left side and you're a righty." And he's saying that, and this is something that has been taught, to switch to your support hand, and so you can go around the left side or your support hand side of cover and shoot that way, because you'll expose less. Yeah, I used to even ascribe to that idea, but I don't anymore. I'd prefer to still shoot my normal way. Number one, if you really understand use of cover and can use it effectively, you can still minimize your exposure, even going to your non-dominant side with your dominant hand in a two-hand grip. But I would even rather cant the gun to my left and go around cover that way than actually switch hands, because I will still be more effective in my shooting doing that than just trying to shoot my support hand only. And there's it's a time cost, right? By transitioning to the support hand, it takes time. And I might not have that time. So I can go around the right side of cover in my standard grip. I can even cant the gun and go right around the left side of cover, and it happens lickety split. So that's my preference when we talk about going right side, left side cover, is still where possible maintain your typical grip and shooting platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to make a comment about carbines, but it really would have taken us away from the idea of single-handed shooting. But carbines are maybe a more realistic place where, different. Yeah, transitioning to support side makes more sense. But then I'm not shooting one-handed; I'm just shooting support side.
It's a different context for sure. And frankly, running a carbine left-handed, when you're a righty, is still easier than actually shooting left-handed on a pistol, because you have more points of contact. So the gun's always more stable than what you get when you switch to your support hand with a pistol. Now, can we in theory practice support hand to a point where we're not really handicapped in that way? Yes. Is it the most wise use of our resources, though, and our training time? Probably not.
I don't know. If I was Riley Bowman, I might spend more time practicing those things, because I'd be so good at all the core stuff. But yeah, I know all that is valid and fair. I think, guys, I love these conversations. And by the way, I very rarely get to be part of the Shooter Ready Challenge episodes. These are generally you and Matthew. So I was really excited to do this. I think the takeaway, if you're listening to this right now, is why aren't you participating in the Shooter Ready Challenge? Because these conversations are great, but we've not given away the punchline of the joke. Like, you still got to go watch the challenge. It's incremental, above and beyond information from what we've discussed here in this episode. So I guess I just wanted to reiterate that we've not given you all of it. Like, go watch the Shooter Ready Challenge.
Yeah. Yep. ShooterReadyChallenge.com is where you'll find the most recent Shooter Ready Challenge, as well as you can still see obvious challenges as well, the archive, if you will. Last month was shooting one hand only and assuming your dominant hand. So very similar, right? But I wanted to do the support hand only side too, because it's intended to be a challenge, right? So I wanted to challenge our participants, those that are doing the Shooter Ready Challenge, to last month. Okay, you got good one-handed practice. Now let's do it with that other hand, the one you don't really like shooting with. Nobody really enjoys shooting support hand only. I don't even particularly, because it's hard enough as it is to shoot our guns, even two-handed. It's hard enough shooting with our dominant hand only. And then it's like, now spend some time, practicing support hand only. It's not particularly fun.
No.
So
it's not.
But that's why, it's great to do as a Shooter Ready Challenge, because it's like, guys, this is a great thing you can do in dry fire practice. You can start making it so that gun feels less like a foreign object in your non-dominant hand. And that time is valuable time. It's good time. So definitely go to shooterreadychallenge.com, watch the video, and put some time in this week or this month. Put some time in practicing with that support hand only. It'll only make you better. I did want to touch real quick, Jacob. I think it's totally a fair point, and I put it on the screen there a moment ago from Casey. She talked about if you have a safety, we need to prepare for that and make accommodations for active or manual safeties on handguns. We go to support hand only. Maybe the safety's on. It could even be that we were shooting the gun with our primary hand, took some kind of injury or whatever, gun went to the ground, and it could have the safety could have got knocked back on.
Or just by nature of picking it up with the opposite hand, you might easily put it right back on.
Yeah. So we always have to assume that we got to take if we have a safety on the gun, we got to assume we got to take it off. We need to have a means of doing that. It's less of an issue in this day and age with more of the striker fired guns that people tend to use and carry. But we even see some striker fired guns that come with safeties. Some of the Smith & Wessons, even the P365 XL has a safety option. Fortunately, in many of those cases, they're ambidextrous, meaning that whether we're right hand, left hand, it's pretty easy to manipulate those. We should still get practice with doing that. But there are a few examples of guns that don't have the ambidextrous safeties, and so we need to have a plan for that.
Well, I'll just quickly add to that if you run a gun with a grip safety, that a common place that we see shooters fail is when they try to switch to support hand only. They just don't get the same kind of grip that they're used to getting, and they fail to fully deactivate that grip safety. So if that's something you run on your gun, that's also something you need to be thoughtful about and work with when you're practicing and training this skill.
A very valid point. Yes, I've seen that. And we still see grip safety issues with dominant hand only shooting.
Oh yeah, sure.
Hand only. Because it's different, and sometimes we make little weird accommodations in the grip when we don't have that extra help and support of our support hand on the gun. So absolutely valid. And that's why this is a great thing to practice in dry fire, including with your live fire gun, made safe, of course, so that you're used to what I feel like transitioning to what's a 1911 into an XD, whatever it is, and you're getting used to how that support hand needs to actually grip the gun to get positive contact with that grip safety. Absolutely.
My last thought, though, we also need to practice this live fire, because when you're trying to deal with recoil, single hand only, support or dominant, that's also a different game. So make sure, run this dry, but then go run it live, so you have a sense for what it feels like to deal with that recoil with just one hand on the gun.
For sure. And by the way, we didn't even get into some of the other little bits and pieces of shooting one hand only, as far as like there's some things we want to do with maybe our stance, maybe how we're holding the actual gun itself, as far as whether we've got a zero can, if we got a little bit of a can or whatever, all of that. And I actually cover a lot of that in the Shooter Ready Challenge video for both October, but also the one from last month, which if you go watch October's, this recent one, you'll see I actually say also go back and watch or rewatch last month's, where I talk about primary hand only shooting, because I cover some other things there that just didn't make sense to cover yet again 1 month later. So we're not touching on a lot of that here today, mostly because of time, and plus, like Jacob said, we want you to go watch Shooter Ready Challenge.
It's free.
Yep, totally
it's free.
Yep. And those of you that have Laser X, get signed or great, because that works great, because the very drill, I show even going in the menu and like, okay, we're doing this thing. It is actually the support hand only drill or whatever. It's in the challenges section of the Laser X app. And that's what we use. And for those that actually participate using Laser X, you're automatically entered in for a giveaway. All right. We used to give away ammo, 200 rounds of ammo. Unfortunately, can't count on that anymore. So we will still send you a worthwhile prize.
Correct.
To be determined.
To be determined.
So make sure you're participating in Shoot Ready Challenge. Speaking of which, a reminder that, and we talked on it earlier, so guys, go get signed up for our weekly giveaways, concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. I was thrilled to give away a couple of pairs of Hunter's HD Gold glasses while at USPSA Nationals. I think we have yet to publish the video of the second winner that was announced. I'll try to get that up today or tomorrow. Unfortunately, we were going to do those videos live from the range, but cell service was not cooperating. so I've had to publish those separately. Today's episode sponsors, LaserX, laserapp.com to learn more. Also, Next Level Training and their wonderful CERT pistol, their whole lineup of CERT products. Nextleveltraining.com is the place to go check those guys out. We do appreciate Next Level Training and the Laser App team's support of Shoot Ready Challenge, as well as the Concealed Carry podcast.
For those of you who are waiting on a CERT pistol, know that you're not alone. CERT pistols have been back ordered for many months now. And we still have customers that ordered in July that are waiting. But we do think we're going to get caught up pretty rapidly over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I just didn't want you to think you'd been forgotten about or that you were alone or unique. Like, the whole industry is out of CERT pistols, and those guys are trying to keep up as quickly as they can.
Yeah. And I want everyone to know, too, that Jacob has really been going to bat for you guys. Those of you that are waiting on CERT pistols, or frankly anything else that we might have that's still back ordered. Jacob he's got your guys back. He was on the phone just the other day with Next Level Training, just kind of seeing where we're at, what's going on, and making sure that they're getting those orders out as quickly as we can. So appreciate you, Jacob, for your diligent efforts, good sir.
De nada.
So with that, we're going to wrap it up and let you all go. A reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care, everyone.